Alright, good morning everyone. My name is Specialist Ward, and today we're going to be talking about accountability and leadership. So today this brief is going to be unclassified, so if you want to take notes, please feel free to go ahead. And if you want to copy the slides to refer back to them later on in the day, I can provide that for you as well. Okay, so our risk assessment level. The overall risk assessment level is low. Make sure that you're aware of tripping hazards so you don't fall and get injured. If you feel dehydrated at any point, drink water so you don't have any issues. And for the fire precautions, in case of the event of a fire, we're going to go through that gate, my left, your right, about 50 meters down the driveway. We're going to regroup, get a count of everyone, and then we'll wait for further instructions there. In case of a tornado, we will walk to my left, your right, into the garage. Again, we will get accountability for everyone, and then we'll wait for further instructions. Purpose. The purpose of this is to understand accountability and why it's important for leaders to be accountable. Overview. So today we're going to be going over the definition of accountability, what you are accountable for, why is accountability important, what is a leader, why should you demonstrate accountability, being accountable for your soldiers, and PCCs and PCIs. Okay, so definition of accountability. Specialist John, please read this definition for me. All right, good job. So to piggyback off of what he said, as a leader, you're going to be accountable for property, documents, and funds. It's our responsibility to make sure we know where these are, what we're signed for, and what state they're in, and if we can use them or not. Because as a leader, you're going to be questioned, why isn't this working, when will it be up, and when is it going to be good to go? So you need to make sure you have the answers for that. What are you accountable for? You're accountable for equipment, soldiers, fiscal responsibility, and yourself. So for equipment, as a leader, you always need to make sure your equipment is squared away in a good standing and not broken. You need to make sure it's housed properly. You can't have your equipment just laying outside, because if it rains, it's going to get destroyed, and then they're going to wonder why you didn't properly put away your equipment. When it comes to soldiers, you always need to look out for their well-being. You need to make sure they're happy all the time, they're not depressed. If they are depressed, you need to figure out why and give them the proper resources to make them better, i.e. behavioral health. Fiscal responsibility. As we all know, the Army loves to know where their money goes and how it's spent. And you're going to need to know what's on your property books, how much everything cost that you got, and why it was spent. Because if you buy something that you just said, oh, I just bought this because it looked cool, you're going to get in trouble for spending money that's not yours. And yourself. You always got to be accountable for yourself, because if you're not, how can the Army expect you to be accountable for other people and their property? Okay, so why is accountability important? This is for your individual actions, trusting environment, personal accountability, accountability and trust, and professionalism. So for individual actions, you always got to make sure that you watch what you say and what you do. As we know, people are always watching us. We need to make sure that we always act in a professional manner to make sure that we don't give a bad representation of the Army. A trusting environment. This goes with your soldiers. You always want to make sure they know that they have a trusting environment, it's a healthy environment, and that they can come to you for anything, and that they know they are safe where they're working at. You can never have your soldiers feel like they can never come to you, or that the environment they work at is toxic, because if that's the case, then we have a pretty serious problem. Personal accountability. If you mess up as a leader, you gotta step up and take account, saying like, hey, this is my fault, I messed up. You can't just put it on your privates or your specialist saying, hey, he's a lower enlisted, so let's just blame him. He has a lot less to lose than I do. So if you show personal accountability, people are going to be like, okay, I can trust this leader. I can come to him for stuff. I know he's responsible. And this falls in the same category as accountability and trust. You want people to trust you. You don't want them to be able to say, hey, we don't trust this guy. Don't give him any taskings to do, because he's just going to mess it up. He's going to lie, and it's not going to get done. And professionalism. As I said earlier, you always want to be professional, since we're being watched, and that's pretty important to us in the Army. Okay, so what is a leader? Okay, so Specialist Gordon, I want you to read this slide for me. All right, good job. So, as a leader, it's your job to motivate your soldiers. You can't just let them sit around and do nothing, because nothing's going to get accomplished. You have to make sure that whatever you're doing, it's not like, hey, if you do this and it doesn't get accomplished on time, I'm gonna give you a negative counseling. You have to make work fun for them in a way, so they're gonna want to do it. And direction, you always have to lead your soldiers in the proper direction. You have to train them. It's your responsibility as a leader to make sure your soldiers know what they're doing. Okay, so why should you demonstrate accountability? You want to demonstrate accountability because of trust, integrity, and work environment. So when it comes to trust, whether it's lower enlisted or your leaders above you, no matter who they are, you want them to trust you. Trust is everything in the Army, and without it, we really have nothing. Integrity. So this falls into one of the Army values. It's always good to say what's on your mind and to not lie. Because if you do lie, that's breaking one of the Army values, and that's not what we stand. We're not gonna break the Army values just because you want to get out of trouble. And your work environment. You always want to make sure your work environment is pleasant and people aren't afraid to go to you to work. Okay, so being accountable for your soldiers. This improves productivity, punctuality, ensuring your soldiers' health and welfare, and caring. So the way that this can improve productivity is that if you know that your leader cares for you, they're going to want to work harder for you. Whereas if you have a leader that doesn't care about you at all, it's going to make you not want to go to work. You're not going to want to work for that leader, and you're going to want to be under someone else. So with them not wanting to work under you, it shows that you can't be accountable for your soldiers, and that's a major issue. Punctuality. Being accountable for your soldiers is your responsibility to make sure they're at the right place at the right time. It's your job to give out the time hacks, to let them know, like, hey, be at the motor pool at 8 o'clock in the morning, be there 15, 20 minutes prior. If you never gave that information to them and they don't show up, that's on you, that they didn't know. And health and welfare of their soldiers. You always want to make sure your soldiers are happy, healthy, they're not upset. If you have a soldier that is typically outgoing, he always talks a lot, and one day he's very quiet, he's keeping to himself, it's your responsibility to go up to him and figure out what's the problem, because there's obviously an issue since he's not acting himself that day. And caring. If your soldiers if your soldiers know that you care about them, it's going to feel like they can entrust you with almost anything. PCCs and PCIs. So for those of you that don't know, this is a pre-combat check and a pre-combat inspection. And this entails personnel, vehicles, and equipment. So whether you're going out to the field or you're about to go on a mission, you always have to do this. You always have to make sure your personnel is good, that they're healthy, nothing's wrong with them. When it comes to vehicles, you have to make sure all your vehicles are up, doing PMCS, making sure nothing's broken. Because if you go out to the field and your vehicle breaks down, it's gonna cause some delays in whatever you're doing. And equipment, i.e. radios or whatever it may be, you got to make sure everything is working. If not, you can You can have it fixed, or make sure you borrow another one from someone else, because if you don't have all this information and you go out to the field, then you're in some serious trouble, and it's your job to make sure everything is good to go. Army leadership model. This is character, presence, and intellect. So all three of these fall into accountability. When it comes to character, you can't just be negative all the time. You can't come to work with a negative attitude saying, oh, today's going to suck. I'm going to hate today, so I'm going to take it out on everyone else. You have to make sure that you always have a positive attitude, because in a way, it sets the mood for the day for everyone else, especially if you're in charge and you're giving out directions. Presence and intellect. If you're not held accountable, how can we trust your intellect and your presence? Okay, so summary. Today we talked over the definition of accountability, what are we accountable for, why is it important, why you should demonstrate accountability, how this affects your soldiers, PCCs and PCIs, and the Army leadership model. Are there any questions at this time? What did we talk about today? Today we talked about accountability and leadership. What was the ultimate purpose behind this brief? The ultimate purpose behind this brief was to inform all of you guys on why being accountable as a leader is important. This concludes my brief.